said sharply, each word piercing the air like a knife. We have given her everything, every opportunity, and she still fails us. My father's voice followed, colder than before. We've done our best to shape her into something worthwhile, but she keeps proving she's not meant to succeed. My gut wrenched horribly, and I felt my breath catch. They were talking about me again. She's lazy, my father added. No matter how much we push her, she never rises to the occasion. She is not the kind of child we can be proud of. Tears welled in my eyes, blinding my vision. I tried. I'd done everything I could and worked harder than ever. But it wasn't enough. Then my mother's voice broke the silence in a way that made my blood run cold. We can't keep doing this. Maybe it's time for her to leave. I felt the ground beneath me shift. For a moment, I thought I misheard her. I was 8 years old. She couldn't have meant that. But she did. After supper, my parents summoned me to the living room. My father sat on the couch with his arms tightly crossed over his chest. My mother stood beside him with an unreadable expression. Adam was nowhere to be found. He never had to witness these events. Mia, we've talked about this, my father remarked, his tone calculated and dispassionate. You aren't meeting our expectations, and quite frankly, we're tired of trying. A shiver went down my spine. Trying what? My voice was barely audible, a murmur of bewilderment. My mother did not hesitate. Trying to fix you, she stated bluntly. If you can't live up to what we expect, then maybe you don't belong here. My breath got locked in my throat. My hands trembled by my sides. Where would I go? I said, barely above a whisper. My father sighed, unfazed by my apprehension. Figure it out, he said. Something within me shattered. Panic clutched at my chest. Please, I implored, my voice faltering as tears ran down my cheeks. I'll do better. I'll work harder. Just don't send me away. I walked closer, reaching for my mother's hand, hoping for some trace of warmth or hesitancy. Instead, she punched me. It happened so quickly that I barely had time to respond. Her punch hit my cheek, sending a ripple of anguish through my skull. My head snapped to the side, and I staggered, almost dropping to the ground. For a brief moment, the entire globe went silent. My heart hammered in my ears. My skin burned where she had smacked me, and the sting went deep into my bones. I held my cheek and trembled as I felt the painful, swollen skin. I gazed up at her, tears in my eyes, grief and betrayal etched over my face. But my mother did not even flinch. Get out, she ordered, her tone low, harsh, and definitive. I looked to my father for some sort of protest, some indication that he disagreed with what had just occurred. But he didn't even look at me. That was it. That was when I stopped being their daughter. The moment I realized they never wanted me in the first place. The sting on my cheek grew worse while I remained there, stunned in shock. My mom had punched me. My father had allowed it to happen. And now they're throwing me away as if I'm nothing. Tears obscured my vision, but I refused to cry in front of them. Crying would not change anything. Begging would not make them adore me. They had made a decision. Without further word, I turned and dashed to my room. My hands shook as I grabbed a tiny suitcase and packed whatever clothes I could locate. I wasn't sure where I was going or what I was meant to do. I just knew I needed to leave. As I zipped up the suitcase, I paused for a second and looked around my room. The walls were blank, except for a few old sketches from my childhood. My bed, which I had slept in for years, suddenly felt unfamiliar. This house has never truly felt like home. But now I realize, it never will. With my heart thumping, I grabbed the strap of my backpack and headed toward the front door. My mother was standing in the hallway, arms crossed, looking at me with frigid contempt. My father was in his normal chair, thumbing through a newspaper as if nothing had happened. Adam was still missing. I swallowed the lump in my throat. One final chance. Maybe if I stared at them long enough, they'd see the sorrow in my eyes and alter their minds. Perhaps my mother will regret slapping me. Perhaps my father would tell me to stay. However, they didn't. My mother grabbed the doorknob and swung it open. Leave. I went outside, hugging my bag tightly, and the cool night air sent shivers down my spine. My feet felt heavy as I walked down the stairs, and my mind begged me to turn back, to do anything, to make them want me. The door slammed closed behind me. I was alone. As I walked through the streets of Seattle, a sense of dread sank in my chest. The street lights flickered above me, sending sweeping shadows across the pavement. The sound of distant traffic, laughter from surrounding homes, and the odd barking of a dog all added to my sense of solitude. I wasn't sure where to go. I did not have a plan. I only had the clothing on my back, a swollen cheek, and a heart that seemed torn into pieces. Hours passed as I wandered aimlessly, fatigue settling into my bones. The chilly wind clawed at my skin, and the hunger in my stomach served as a harsh reminder that I hadn't eaten since dinner. I wanted to collapse on the sidewalk and give up, letting the world take me whole. Then I heard a familiar voice. I stood in the dark light of a street lamp, arms wrapped around myself in a desperate attempt to stay warm. My feet ached from walking, my stomach twisted from hunger, and the sting of my mother's hit lingered on my cheek. I felt entirely lost. The streets of Seattle stretched out before me, foreign and unwelcoming. I had nowhere to go and no idea what to do next. My parents, no, they weren't my parents anymore, had made it clear that I was no longer a part of their lives. The realization brought another flood of hopelessness smashing over me. And then, in the depths of my sorrow, I heard a voice. Mia! I froze. My breath caught. The voice was warm, familiar, and filled with concern. I turned back, my heart thumping, and noticed a woman standing a few steps away. It was Mary. My aunt. For a minute, I was unable to move. I wasn't sure if I was hallucinating or if my fatigued mind was pulling a nasty joke on me. But as she got closer, her eyes scanned my face, taking in my injured cheek and the bag hanging over my shoulder. I realized this was true. "Oh my God, Mia? What are you doing out here?" she inquired, her voice filled with concern. I opened my lips to respond, but the words would not come. How could I describe what had just occurred? How could I tell her my mother had punched me? That my father had witnessed it and said nothing? That they'd discarded me like garbage? Mary must have noticed the agony in my eyes because, before I could even speak, she rushed up and hugged me. It was the first proper hug I had received in years. The warmth of her hug stirred something deep within me. I'd been fighting back my tears, refusing to cry, refusing to show my parents how deeply they had hurt me. But as Mary's arms wrapped around me, I shattered. A sob slipped from my lips. Then another. Before I knew it, I was crying furiously into her shoulder. She said nothing. She just held me while I cried and fell apart. When I finally pulled away, my breath caught. She tenderly caressed my face, her fingertips stroking against my injured cheek. Her eyes darkened with rage. "Did someone hurt you?" she said, her tone stern. I paused, but I could not lie. "It was my mom," I said quietly. "She hit me. And then they told me to leave." Mary inhaled quickly, her jaw clenching. For a minute, she appeared to want to march right to their house and give them a piece of her mind. Instead, she took a long breath and gently exhaled, as if forcing herself to remain calm. "Come with me," she urged, her tone softer now. "You're safe now, Mia. I promise." She held my hand, and for the first time that night I felt less alone. Mary guided me through the quiet neighborhoods, her grip hard yet pleasant. My legs ached, and my body was fatigued from the constant walking, but I didn't care. For the first time since leaving that place, I felt secure. We arrived at her apartment, a small but charming space tucked in a quiet section of town. When she unlocked the door and led me inside, I felt an overwhelming sense of warmth. Something I had never felt in my own home. There were warm blankets spread over the couch, family portraits on the walls, and the faint aroma of vanilla candles wafted through the air. "Sit down, sweetheart," Mary urged gently, directing me to the kitchen table. "You look exhausted." I obeyed, my body too exhausted to argue. I watched her walk about the kitchen, preparing a bowl of soup and pouring me a drink of water. She did not ask me 100 questions. She did not demand explanations. She simply took care of me. As she placed the bowl in front of me, I paused. My mother had never done this. Not while I was unwell. Not while I was upset. Not ever. "Eat," she spoke quietly. "And then we'll talk." My first sip of soup warmed me from the inside out. I didn't realize how hungry I was until I started eating and finished the entire bowl in minutes. Mary sat across from me, studying me intently. "Now," she replied, folding her hands together. "Tell me everything." I gulped hard, my gaze sliding to the table. "Where do I even start?" "They never wanted me," I finally admitted, my voice lifeless. "No matter what I did, it was never enough. Adam was their favorite. I was just there. A failure. A disappointment." Mary's face clouded, but she did not interrupt. "I got a C+ on a math test today," I explained. "And that was the final straw. They said I wasn't worth the effort anymore. My mom." My fingers brushed over my injured cheek, the recollection still fresh. "She hit me. Then they told me to leave." An uneasy quiet enveloped the room. When I finally looked up, Mary's face was furious. I always knew your parents were cruel, she continued, her voice trembling. But this is unforgivable. Tears welled up again in my eyes. But this time, I wasn't simply sad. I was also angry. How could they have done this to me? How could they sleep comfortably if they had abandoned their own daughter? Mary stretched across the table and squeezed my hand. Listen to me, Mia. You're not a failure. You're not worthless. You are smart and strong, and you didn't deserve any of this. A lump developed in my throat. I'd spent my entire life trying to prove myself to my parents, but as I sat in Mary's warm, comfortable kitchen, I came to a realization. I did not have to prove anything to them. They'd made their choice. And now I'll make mine. I was not going back. That night, for the first time in a long time, I slept soundly. There were no quiet arguments outside my door. There is no overpowering sense of failure pushing down on my chest. Mary's corridor light cast a nice glow into the guest room, and a blanket pulled over me provided warmth. For the first time in my life, I was not simply surviving. I felt safe. Mary served me scrambled eggs and toast for breakfast the next morning. It was unusual to have someone care about me unconditionally, without expecting perfection in exchange. As I ate, she sat across from me, drinking her coffee. You can stay here for as long as you need, she stated simply, as if it wasn't a question. I hesitated, a tinge of doubt seeping in. I don't want to be a burden, I muttered. Mary scoffed and shook her head. You are not a burden, Mia. You never were. Her words sank deep into my chest, releasing years of self-doubt. I had long believed that I was unwelcome. That I was not good enough. But maybe the problem was never mine. Perhaps it was them. With Mary's help, I began to rebuild my life. She assisted me in transferring to a new school where I could start over, free from the continual weight of my parents' expectations. At first, it was difficult. I still cringed at loud voices. I still felt like I needed to prove my worth to everyone around me. But Mary never made me forget my potential. You're smart, Mia. You can do anything you set your mind to, Mom told me every day. I studied harder than ever. Not because I want approval, but because I wanted to prove to myself that I was capable. Slowly, I began to excel in school and gained confidence in my own talents. Meanwhile, my brother Adam remained inside the house, still imprisoned by our parents' crushing expectations. I scarcely spoke to him throughout those first several years, but I was concerned about him. I'd escaped. However, he was still stuck. My phone chimed one evening as I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my school assignments. My heart almost stopped when I saw Adam's name on the screen. Adam. Hello, could we talk? I stared at the message, my fingers hanging above the keyboard. A part of me wanted to dismiss it, to leave that period of my life behind and never look back. But another part of me, the one that still cared despite everything, understood Adam was contacting me for a reason. I took a deep breath. Mia, what is going on? Little did I realize the text would signal the beginning of something I never expected, a shift that would alter everything. Adam's letter sat on my screen, shimmering in the softly lighted room. For a time, I paused. Why now? He had never reached out to me before, not when I was fighting to meet our parents' unrealistic expectations, not when I was kicked out, and not in the years following. But something told me this wasn't a regular text. I responded fast. Yes, we can discuss, what's happening? His reply came almost immediately. Adam. Can we meet? I need to get out of here for a while. I could sense the desperation in his words. It wasn't like Adam to sound unsure, not the golden boy, the favorite child who always got his way. But something had changed. An hour later, I met him in a quiet coffee shop near Mary's flat. When I saw him, I knew something was wrong. The confident, polished brother I recalled appeared weary. His eyes were sunken, his posture slouched, and his fingers tapped nervously on the table. He looked up as I sat down, his face hesitant and almost remorseful. Hey. I nodded and kept my voice neutral. Hey. We didn't speak for a while. The stillness between us was dense with unspoken words. Finally, Adam moaned and scratched his temples. Mom and Dad are suffocating me, he said. They won't let me do anything that doesn't fit their idea of success. I told them I wanted to go to a performing arts school, and they lost it. They said I was wasting my potential. I frowned. What do you mean? I thought you wanted to follow in their footsteps, law school, corporate success, all of that. Adam gave out a hollow laugh. That's what they wanted. Not me. For the first time, I looked at him, not as the sibling I despised for being the favorite, but as someone who had been trapped like me. He may not have been kicked out like I was, but he had been just as confined and crushed by expectations. "I can't do this anymore, Mia," he said, his voice raspy. "I don't want to wake up every day feeling like I have to be perfect just to be worthy of their approval." I had a strong sense of recognition. I understood that feeling better than anyone else. I took a deep breath. Then I stopped hesitating. Adam looked up at me, bewilderment in his tired eyes. "You don't owe them your life," I stated firmly. "If you don't want the life they're forcing on you, then leave. Start over. You have a choice, Adam." His jaw stiffened. "It's not that easy," he remarked. "I still live under their roof. They pay for everything: school, clothes, food. If I leave, I have nothing." I slumped back in my chair, contemplating his comments. He was not mistaken. It was simpler for me because Mary had taken me in and given me another chance. Adam had no one else but me. I met his gaze. "Then come stay with me." He blinked, taken aback. "What?" "I mean it," I said. "If you really want out, then leave. I'll help you figure things out, the same way Mary helped me. You don't have to do this alone." Adam swallowed hard, his hands curling into fists against the table. For a little while, he said nothing. Then he nodded. "Okay." And just like that, everything changed. For years, I assumed Adam was the lucky one, the one they cherished and desired. But now I knew he had been stuck in the same way that I was. The difference was that I'd already broken free. Now it was his time. The tension in the air the night Adam departed our parents' house was almost unbearable. He had packed a single bag, just as I did years before. But, unlike me, he could choose to leave. He was not being tossed out. He was finally gaining control of his own life. Mary and I waited for him outside, in her car, which was parked a few homes away from our boyhood home. My gut was tight with apprehension, knowing our parents would not let him leave without a battle. But Adam was determined. He'd spent years as their perfect son, their golden child. And now, for the first time, he was selecting himself. The front door opened 15 minutes later, and Adam stepped out onto the porch. Mom and Dad were just behind him. Even from a distance, I could see the rage in their faces. Mary tightened her grip on the steering wheel. "Are you sure he's ready for this?" she wondered. I breathed slowly. "He has to be." Adam strode down the stairs, his motions rigid and strained. My father stood at the doorway, arms crossed, face twisted with barely restrained rage. "If you leave now, you will not come back," my father cautioned. Adam paused. I could practically feel his internal struggle, years of training, years of being the preferred son, the one they shaped to their liking. Leaving meant losing up all of that. But then he took another stride forwards. "Then I won't come back." My mother gave a bitter laugh. "You're making a mistake, Adam. You're nothing without us." I felt my nails drive into my palms as she said. I'd heard those identical lines before, words designed to rob us of our confidence and make us believe we were powerless without them. Adam, however, did not shy away. He returned to them for one last time. "No, Mom, I was nothing with you." And with that, he walked towards us. Mary accelerated as soon as he got inside the car, pushing away from the curb. I turned to face Adam, expecting him to display some expression of contrition. But instead, he sighed with relief. For the first time in his life, he was free. That night, Adam stayed in Mary's guest room, which had become my safe haven all those years before. He was quiet at first while processing everything. But as we sat at the kitchen table, something about him felt lighter. "I should have done this sooner," he said, staring at his hands. I gave him a slight smile. "You did it when you were ready. That's all that